Stories on the Rooftop is a platform for sharing personal experiences and engaging in open dialogue with each other. Through these conversations, we seek to enhance our understanding of the diversity of experience within our community and connect with each other to discuss issues that are relevant to all of us. I'm delighted that Alim Hirji will be our speaker today and will take us through his experience of rising through the ranks of table tennis and how the sport has shaped his life from an early age and the lessons he's learnt along the way. Before I hand over to Alim, I'll just run through a few logistical points. Alim will start off by sharing his story, and then we'll have time for questions. You can ask questions by typing in the chat box, and feel free to use the chat space at any time, and we'll aim to get to all your questions in turn. At the end of the session, we'll have a short evaluation survey, which we'd appreciate if you could complete. Please do switch on your video if you feel comfortable and put your display name as your real name. It's always nice to know who we're looking at and who's joining us today. Finally, as I mentioned, Stories is all about sharing personal experience, and we want to have a safe space for everyone to be able to share their views. So please be respectful when sharing your questions and comments. With that, let's get started. Alim, over to you.
Thanks, Eliza. Firstly, thanks for everyone for joining. I know things have opened up now, lockdown's starting to come to an end, so appreciate that you guys are here and listening to my story, and hopefully you take away something, whether it's an interesting story or whether it's just something that something that I've learned that I can share with you. So when I was asked to do this, when Elise asked me, I initially thought, why? What can I share that you guys could take away, that it would be interesting to you guys. I looked at some of the past speakers, and they've done so many cool and interesting things. It got me thinking, it got me thinking, going through my life, specifically about table tennis and sport, and what could I share with you guys that would be interesting. And I went through my life, and actually I thought, although some of the things that I've gone through seem normal to me from a sporting perspective, some of these things aren't something that the general public or people had gone through generally. Although it seems normal to me to compete at certain levels and train, and do certain things, it might not be normal. So hopefully some of you guys can experience some of the stories that I've been through, and some of the feelings that I've been through sport, and the platform that sport has given me as well. So just quickly to introduce myself. So I'm, as Elisa mentioned, I'm Alim Hirji, 31 years old. Currently work in the family business with my dad, my mum, and my brother. Live in London Bridge, close to London Bridge, with a flatmate from my old work. He's actually moving out in the next month, so I need a new flatmate. But anyway, yeah, so I guess currently working and trying to play table tennis. Obviously through COVID has been difficult, but trying to keep active and trying to do sport. And I guess the first thing, before I go through my story, and I guess chronologically is my plan to go through chronologically and pick out themes and things like that. What is table tennis? So most of you guys know table tennis. I mean, it seems like a stupid question. What is table tennis? Most of you guys have played it, whether it's on a holiday, whether it's in a park, whether or not you played it in your local youth club. And some of you might think you're even very good. I know lots of my friends who casually play think they're very good. And I think that's the beauty of table tennis, is it's very accessible for many people. But what is table tennis at an elite level? Because it is very different. Because it's accessible, and because many people play it, many people think that they know the sport, but actually at an elite level, it's technically very, very difficult. There's, just like in many other sports, there's always the technical nuances around it. But what people don't realize is the physical element to it as well. It's physically very demanding on your body. Maybe not so much in terms of pure raw strength, but in terms of being explosive, in terms of being quick. It's just as physically demanding as any other sport that I've played. And mentally as well. So mentally demanding, again, just like any other sport. And I'll touch upon that a bit later as well. So that's kind of, trying to build up table tennis as not just, a hobby sport that anyone can play. Although, the accessibility around it is something that is brilliant about the sport. So as I mentioned, I'll go through chronologically my story, my life, how I picked it up, and some of the mini stories that I've gone through, and I'll try and touch upon a few themes that I've learned and been through. And as I think Elisa mentioned, if there's any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll try and answer them either as I go along or at the end. So I started table tennis when I was 11 years old. My mum might not agree with this, but I think she was really angry with me because I'd done something wrong, because I was quite a naughty kid when I was younger. I mean, I could arguably say I'm a naughty kid now, but anyway, we were driving home, and I think we passed the local table tennis club, and she just dropped me there and said, go. I mean, she'll probably dispute this, but she said, go away, go play. So I went in there, and I remember going in there and seeing two players play at what I thought was a very high level, hitting the ball back and forth pretty fast. And I've not seen sport. I guess I've not seen sport at that level. At the time, I'd played tennis and maybe a few other sports, but I was playing county tennis at the time, and I saw that level, and I was like, wow, this is something that really excites me, and I want to try and do that. Basically, I want to replicate that. So for the next few months or period of time, I went there. I played a lot, and I just remember there used to be a game at the end of each session called Top Table. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. So the winners move up to the top table, the losers move down to the bottom of the table. And I remember my coach telling me, for some reason, I wasn't the most talented kid. I wasn't the most, I hadn't played for the most, I probably wasn't the best kid at all, nowhere near. But I always used to end up somewhere around the top table. And I thought about why is that, and whether it's to do with my determination, the fact that I wanted to win more than other people, because it certainly wasn't to do with the talent I had or the amount that I played at that time. So I think even in that, that's kind of one thing that motivated me, because I wanted to win at in sport, even at that young age. And then I remember I was, as I mentioned, I was playing tennis at the time. I was kind of umming and ahhing between tennis and table tennis. What do I do? Because ultimately, when you want to pursue something to a slightly higher level, which I'd started to do, it's very difficult to juggle more than one sport specifically. And I remember it was coming to the crunch time of deciding whether I want to play tennis or table tennis. Again, my mum probably hopes I'd pick tennis, but I remember one of the key, probably the key this decision and kind of driver about my decision was the coach. And I guess it shows mentorship is important just at that age as at any age, because the coach immediately had a rapport with the table tennis coach. He was a hard guy. He would work me hard, and he wasn't kind of, he was just a normal table tennis coach, but I had a good rapport with him. I could tell he wanted me to do well, and he wanted me to improve and get somewhere. The tennis coach, I remember I didn't have that same rapport with him. I was maybe just another kid. And I remember, again, I did say I was a naughty kid, so I'll kind of preface this story with that. I remember I was leaving the tennis court, and I had to make a decision, I remember, and he told me off as I was walking off or something, and he just cleaned the tennis court. And, as I said, he was telling me off. I was really upset. As I walked around, he just kept bugging me. I got my tennis racket, dug it in the gravel. I was 11 years old, so please forgive me. Dug it in the gravel, and he goes, "If you chuck the gravel on the tennis court, you're never going to come back here." And you know what I said? I just chucked it on the tennis court and ran away. And sometimes it took that decision to go, and then I was totally focused on table tennis. I'm not advocating doing that, by the way, but yeah, and that's from then. I guess it's the point just to emphasize how important having a good mentor is in life, but also specifically in sport. It's really the reason why I chose to pursue table tennis. And then moving on to my initial success. So I think, as I said, I started when I was just about 11 or 11 and a half. I reached the top 20 in England when I was in the under 13 level. So I guess 12 and close to 13, which was quite, I mean, I probably wasn't happy at the time because I wanted to get higher, but looking back at it, I'd only played for a year and a half. Most of the players had played, far longer than that. So I think that was a good achievement. In 2002, I played NSF. Those of you, hopefully you remember NSF 2002 when I was 12 years old. I vaguely remember that. I remember I played I played the men's table tennis. I actually won the men's table tennis, and I remember my parents being happy. But again, I really can't remember much of it other than throwing tantrums when I was losing probably, and just playing against people that are much bigger than me. But I think that was a highlight for me in terms of having that memory. And then I guess just a theme I want to touch upon now is the training. So I remember even at a young age, I think at 13 was the first time I went, I think I might have even been 12, went away for the summer for a training camp in Hungary. And I guess, I mean, not specific to Hungary, but I think the training camps and training in general is something that again, I touched upon at the beginning, not too many people associate a sport like table tennis, the amount of physical training you need to do. I remember at least twice a week not being able to walk down the stairs because the amount of physical intensive training, whether it's sprints, whether it's frog jumps, whether it's like long distance running, whether it's wall sits. It was very, very leg dominant as opposed to upper body strength, but there was just so much physical stuff that we did in training we did that as I said, it's not the first thing that comes to mind to most people when you think, oh, table tennis training. You don't really think about that. But that was very, very demanding. I couldn't do half the stuff I was doing then. Now I remember there were times, yeah, as I said, I really couldn't walk down the stairs. And I also think there were certain things that the coaching styles, maybe when I was younger, so maybe 15, 20, 18 years ago, that I don't think they could replicate now. They were I would say brutal is probably, it sounds a bit negative, but it was pretty tough in terms of anything I'd say that was out of turn, I would have to go and do a lap, go and walk on crawl under the table back and forth for 20 times. There were lots of kind of, as I said, brutal is probably not the right word, but lots of things like that which would essentially encourage us to get physically fitter and also teach discipline as well. But I remember one thing that that stood out to me in terms of that, like, from that element. I remember, as I said, I went to Hungary when I was 13, 14. I think it was the second trip, so I was 14. And I walked into the hall and there was a Chinese coach there. So there was a Chinese, who's based in Hungary, but a Chinese coach there. I think it was the second time I went in that hall, and I was just practicing there. As a kid, I was thinking I'm good and I'm practicing it because it's fun. And the coach walked into the hall and 3 or 4 seconds later, kicked to the back of my leg. And I remember being on the floor. I remember just falling on the floor and kind of him shouting at me in Hungarian, mix of Hungarian and Chinese or whatever. And I was kind of a bit startled, but I was like, what's going on? Shouted at me. A few seconds later, he went away and whatever. And then the coach that I went with came up to me and just said, he basically shouted at you, but basically you're not bending your legs enough. And I was like, he could tell me you're not bending your legs enough, but that was his style. And that was wrong. That's not the correct thing that you should do to kids, and that's not the correct thing how you should teach. But I probably bent my legs after that point and was extremely wary not to do that. So yeah, I think those training camps where I went away and whether it was to Hungary, but I've been all around the country growing up. It's Middlesbrough on the summer terms, or Newcastle, or anywhere really across the UK. Those are the memories and I guess moments where I probably improved the most, where it was kind of 9 to 5, 9 to 6, training in the hall, training outside of the hall, physical training. One thing that I think that we didn't do as much is the mental side of it, which I think now is a particular focus, because and I'll go through that in later on, is probably arguably one of the most important things, not just in sport but across all of life as well. So yeah, I think the key takeaway from that is discipline. You can't underestimate the discipline, the hard work, the physical hard work, and the stuff behind the scenes. Whenever you see any athlete, not just table tennis, if you look at all sports, very easy to see the glamour and the glamorous side to winning and competition. You see how lucky they are to be in that position, how lucky people are to get all this money, and you see footballers and stuff. But there's a hell of a lot of work that goes behind that you don't see, and it's not the work that just starts from once they become a superstar. It's years and years and years before that to get to where they need to where you see them. Okay, so then moving on to school. So I kind of, or kind of interacting with school. So at school, I played a number of sports. As I mentioned, tennis, table tennis wasn't actually in school until probably later, but I used to play football. I used to be very good at hockey, actually. So I used to play in the first team in hockey, cricket, etc. So I found it difficult to balance the sports, particularly because table tennis was my kind of main sport, I guess you call it. And so when I was younger, so 13, 14, it was fine to balance it. As I got a bit older, when sport becomes a kind of a bigger thing in school, it was tough to be able to manage that, to say to the sports teacher, sorry, I can't play this hockey game on the weekend because I've got a table tennis tournament, and they would say, what are you talking about? Like, no. It was tough from that perspective. I guess socially, I look back at it, maybe not at the time, I look back at it, and there were a lot of sacrifices that I had to make, and I guess anyone playing sport to relatively high level had to make. After school, if my friends used to go out and meet and do something, I couldn't do that. Or not only I couldn't do that, I wouldn't want to do that. I'd want to go and practice and go to the training hall. On weekends, if they had certain things, majority of the weekends I was out playing competitions, either in UK or abroad, and I guess it had a social impact because I wouldn't be hanging out with all my friends who, at school I was just as popular as the next guy, but I wouldn't, outside of school, that was my focus, and it wasn't kind of, if I didn't have that, it'd be much more socializing. I guess that's a sacrifice that I guess everyone has to make if they want to do anything such as sport in their lives growing up. I think one thing that helped me, and as I said, I kind of didn't think about this until I had to think about this, was there was a scheme called TAS, it was Talented Athlete Support Scheme. I think it started when I was 15 or 16, and there was someone from the sporting governing bodies and institutions that would come around, people like myself, once a month, and we'd sit down in person. I know it seems crazy these times, but we sit down in person, and we'd go through my goals, and we'd go through my achievements, and not necessarily what I want to do, and how am I going to dedicate the next time, and how am I going to reach those achievements. And it was someone external that I spoke to, and I think that's something that was really important for me as well, and I think that's important for many people. I didn't really have people that were that much older than me who I knew who had participated in sport to that level, that high. So it was good to have that kind of someone external who didn't really know me to kind of talk me through that, and I could talk to them about certain problems or certain issues within sport around and try and gain some sort of insight into how I can overcome them. So I think that's, again, leading on to the mentorship, but I think it's important to talk about these things. It's very easy to not do that, and think, especially in a sport like table tennis, I was very much alone in terms of my thinking for sport. So that would help a lot in terms of talking about it. Okay, and then moving through school, maybe later in life, so coming up to 16, 17, 18, I think that's probably where I improved the most. I've written down a few things in terms of what I achieved. So I won't go through, but I think the main ones, we won Junior British League in the team, so we're the best team in the UK. I beat the number 2 in Europe at that time. I represented England. I got as high as number 13 in the senior men. So when I was 17 or maybe 18, that was a big achievement for me, to realize really think I could beat anyone in England really at that time. And I guess, yeah, so sorry, the theme that I wanted to cover on that is competition generally, because I think I touched upon the training before. The competition for me were the highlights of my life really, I guess, growing up, but also now. And when I play competition, I am a competitive person generally, and I think you kind of have to be to excel in something like a sport, especially individual sport. But competitions used to, especially the local competitions, we used to travel. So it could be anywhere in the UK, as glamorous as Blackpool, but it could be Newcastle, but it could be Dover. It could be literally anywhere where we'd go. We'd travel, wake up early in the morning, stay the night there if it was a weekend competition. Get to the hall, warm up for an hour, play your group matches and play your knockout matches, and hopefully get as far as you can get to. And I think competition actually was really, really useful for me to learn. I mean, again, I'm looking in hindsight. At the time, it wasn't. At the time, I was just trying to win and didn't really care about anything else. But it was really useful for me to learn so many things. I mean, it's amazing how the best players in the hall didn't normally win tournaments. It was generally the people that could control their mind and control their nerves, and myself included. I remember losing matches when I was nervous and thinking I'm a better player, and I remember winning matches where I think I shouldn't have, maybe I shouldn't have won them, but the other guy got nervous, and to the point where I kind of can specifically remember certain matches in certain big occasions. I can remember in the national championships, I had a chance to at that age get a medal in the quarterfinals, and it was 3-3, 7-3 up against the number 2 in England at the time, maybe number 3 in England, and I lost that match. I can actually remember every single shot that I did and every single shot that he did and all the points that I lost, because that competitiveness and that kind of those moments were so important, and I was so nervous. I can remember putting my hand out and shaking like this, and I still do that to this day. To this day, when I try to measure how nervous I am at anything, whether it's sport, whether it's not sport, even if it's public speaking or if it's at literally anything, I put my hand out like that, and then my hand's shaking like this, I know I'm nervous. And at least I know that, and at least I can manage that. And yeah, it's as I said, I can remember those big moments. I remember, so I'll go on a bit later in my life, but I played a match in Belgium where I played when I was 18, 19. And the first ever match, it was new surroundings, new team. I never met them before. They expected these things. I was getting paid, so they were again expecting things. And the first match, I've never been so nervous in my life. I lost the first match against someone I definitely shouldn't have lost to. It was a very easy first kind of match. We played 4 in a match. And I just remember being so nervous. And I remember I then scraped through the next 3. And then after that, it was completely fine. I'd met the people after that. They welcomed me afterwards. We had dinner together after. We embraced, we won. So it's amazing how nerves and very different things can trigger different people as well. When in that example in Belgium, that was new surroundings, new people, and wanting to impress. After that, I didn't. They weren't then new people, and they kind of that went away, and so did the nerves. Big moments. I've luckily enough been to an Olympic qualification. I didn't actually play in it, but I luckily have seen an Olympic qualification, and I've never seen a hall or anywhere that's just crazy like that, because every single person is their tension is so much, because getting to Olympics for anyone really is the pinnacle in many people's careers. People that and because that was a qualification tournament, that was people that might get to the Olympics. It's not the best people that always get there, and they this is just another day. These are people that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for them. And seeing the results on that, I remember the results then were flipped on their head. The best people were losing. Anyone was losing to anyone, because it just was the nerves of people's livelihoods. Were crazy. And I think it's just another example of how controlling your nerves is probably the most important thing, over and above, how physically fit you are and how technically good you are, etc., etc. Okay, so going back to kind of chronologically, I guess looking when I was at 16, 17, I was kind of umming and ahhing whether or not to, a decision to make, whether or not I would move abroad. So in my head at that time, I did want to go abroad for a year to practice and to try and basically play full time and see what I can do and see if I can improve. And the advice from my coach was, the earlier you go, the younger you go, the more chance you have to, make it, or the more chance you have to improve and get better and essentially see how good you can get. And the people that you see on your TVs and other sports and every sport, they're playing full time, as a kid, right? They're not waiting, they're not going to their full school years, and they're not doing all of that. And obviously, school for me was still a priority. So I decided at that point not to go abroad when I was in my after school. I remember the last year of school, I actually played. I played in a league in Hungary that year. So I tried out for a league in France. I remember I went to France with another boy. We both went there to try out, and unfortunately I didn't make it. I guess it's a subjective decision that they made. So I was pretty down about that. But then luckily, again, because of my coach who was Hungarian, had a contact, he got me into a league in Hungary. So every second weekend I'd go and fly. I'd actually fly to Hungary, different places, sometimes different places, and play matches there and come back. And again, it was, at that time I was only a kid, it was small money, but it was still a big deal for me, to win and to the first taste of kind of semi-professional life, I guess, playing. And I think, again, I want to touch now upon just the experiences that I had abroad, because table tennis specifically gave me so many opportunities to travel. It gave me, I can't count on probably, if I had 4 hands, I couldn't count on the number of places I went before I was 16 or 18. I'd gone to, obviously, Hungary, I mentioned, but I guess I'd go through everywhere. Played in leagues in Belgium, went to Sweden, France, Italy, Germany. I mean, so many countries I went to compete. And I guess luckily sport gave me the opportunity to do that, because I wouldn't have done that without it as a kid. And obviously a lot of it is spending time in training halls, but some of it is seeing the place. I think later when I was 18, 19, I went to see China, Russia, Malaysia, kind of that side of it, basically everywhere. And I think that's something that, I guess, an individual sport like tennis gave me the ability. So I'm grateful for it to just open the door for me to visit those kinds of places. And I think it definitely developed me as a person, meeting different people from different rays of life. I guess, I learned that, mussels is, the place that I had was famous for mussels. I didn't know that before. I learned that, Belgium had a Flemish side and a French side, and the Flemish side all speak perfect English, and the French side don't want to speak to me. I learned in Austria, I used to take trains from Vienna, which is kind of in the middle to Graz, which was I still can't pronounce it. I actually played there for a year. Graz, or however you want to pronounce it. So I used to take the train from Vienna to Graz, and I remember going through the mountains and the forests, and going through the tunnels. And I remember that being so memorable. I can picture that in my head now, because I used to make that journey often, and how beautiful it was. But not many people would know about that. So it's amazing how something like sport gives you that insight and gives you that ability to also meet people as well. So I met people from, probably 10, 15 different European countries that I could pick up a phone to now and call them and say, hi, I'm visiting Lithuania now. Can I come visit you? And they'll take me around, and they'll show me, their home, etc. Okay, moving back to my kind of chronological life. So university. So I finished school, went to university in Nottingham. Hopefully some of you know Nottingham University recently, because we had ESF there in 2019. Some of you can remember hopefully most of you have been to ESF. If you have, you can remember the sports facilities that they have there. It's pretty special. When I was there, they didn't have that. They didn't have that whole building wasn't there. That whole setup wasn't there. It was an older style building which hadn't had anything specific for table tennis or many other sports as well. And I remember I went there for the first 3 months. I didn't pick up a bat. I didn't do any exercise. I got a bit chubby. I guess I wasn't motivated. I was enjoying university and meeting people, etc. But I didn't play much sport or table tennis specifically. And it's probably the longest time I hadn't played in a chunk of time, for 3 or 4 months. I guess COVID has knocked that out of the water, but I hadn't played for 3 or 4 months. And then I just remember being motivated by something. I can't actually remember why, but I decided to sign for the club in Belgium, as I mentioned at that point. And that triggered me and gave me a spark to say, right, I can't now mess around. I have to focus. I have to get fit. I have to essentially train for a league that I want to play in. I basically, from that moment, I think it was January, February time, I started running. I started going to the gym. I started doing everything to try and essentially get myself fit for the following year. As I said, there wasn't much set up there, so I used to have to essentially motivate myself to do it. And I think university was the first time that I had to, I mentioned I had, there was discipline involved and stuff, but this was the first time I had to self-discipline myself. I had to, on my own, there was no one telling me to do, what to do. I had to really find the drive myself to, book squash courts and get tables there and play with someone I knew there. I was driving to no, on the first year I didn't have a car, but second and third year, driving to Grantham, which was 45 minutes away every single week, sometimes twice a week, there and back, whilst the rest of my uni mates are going out and meeting and etc. So I used to have to do that. And all of that fell on my own back. It wasn't, growing up, there was, 4 or 5 sessions a week that they're there. I just turn up and I'm there and the coach is there. Whereas this was, I had to organize this all myself. So I think university was the first time where I had to self-motivate myself, which again, looking back at it, was a great thing to do. Now, I guess you learn if I want to do something, or if anyone wants to do something, you have to have that self-motivation. As a kid, lots of things are kind of provided to you, but that wasn't there at that point. And then, moving into the second year, the first year we proved ourselves. The second year, the university kind of recognized us. There was me and one other guy actually who was a similar standard to me, which was actually very lucky that we could practice together. And we became scholars there. They gave us grants to go and play. They gave us gold access to the gyms. They basically allowed us to, or enabled us or helped us to try and boost the sport for the university. I think it came off the bat because I think we won our, for the university, we won our group. I can't remember what it's called, Bucks, I think it was. So they kind of pushed us towards doing that, which was really good, and helped us carry on in the sport. So then fast forward to university. I did an internship at Accenture during the university time, but I really wanted to, as I mentioned before, I really wanted to see how good I could get, so after that I took a year abroad, and again I investigated myself. I kind of looked into Spain. I almost moved to Spain actually, partly because I wanted to learn Spanish as well. I knew a couple of people again through tables. I didn't know them very well, but I just messaged with them and kind of almost moved there. But then I had another opportunity in Hungary again. As I said, I'd been to Hungary many times. I started to learn a little bit of the language. I had that connection there. So in the end, I ended up moving to Hungary and playing for a club in Austria. I wasn't very glamorous. Those of you know me, I'm not the most glamorous person anyway, but I was living essentially on a couch in a room, someone's room. I was paying £100 a month, basically just live on the side of someone's flat. Used to practice every day, used to get up in the morning, take 2 or 3 buses to work. I say it was work. 2 or 3 buses to the training hall, practice from 9 to 11:30, have lunch, have like a 45-minute nap, and then have another session from 2:30 roughly to 4:30, do another fitness for an hour after that, whether it's running, whether it's weights, whether it's whatever it was, and then take 2 or 3 buses back home. And that was every single day. As I said, it wasn't the most glamorous thing in the world, but I improved a lot during that period, during that time. Again, in hindsight, should I have done that earlier? Maybe if I had done that when I was younger, maybe I would have improved slightly more. But regardless, I think that period was, again, I guess the self-discipline from before was really key, because some of it was on my own back. If I didn't want to train, if I didn't want to practice, I could easily just say, I'm going to have the day off. I'm going to have a couple of days off, which definitely some people did that. But I knew I was there for, at that point, a year, and I wanted to make the most of it. So I made sure I did everything that kind of I was guided to do from the coach back in England. Whenever there was an opportunity to go out of town to go to like some sort of training camp, even if it wasn't the most glamorous thing, I'd go and do it. Sometimes I stay in a little room but next to the table tennis hall, and just sleep there and play, because I wanted to just be near the hall and try and improve as much as possible. I was lucky enough to, at that time, I met the coach, the national team coach for the ladies, so the ladies national team coach in Hungary. So then I had a good rapport with him, and he invited me to practice with the national team in Hungary, which was really cool. So then I kind of mixed my training a bit and got to know them a bit, and it was awesome. I'm still friends with a couple of the girls there now, which is really cool. And they, a couple of them are playing in the Olympics in Rio upcoming, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I think the moral of my year, I guess the message from that year, was that it was pretty tough in terms of intense practice. It wasn't, we're playing full-time sport, that's cool. It turned a little bit into a job in terms of I had to, sometimes you don't want to practice, sometimes you don't want to be in the hall, but it's important, if you want to develop, if you want to improve, it's important to make sure that you keep doing that and you're focused on your end goal. And I guess definitely learned discipline there. I guess discipline, I read it somewhere recently that discipline is sacrificing what you want now to get what you want to get in the future. And I guess that was definitely, sometimes I definitely didn't want to take buses and go to the hall and et cetera, but I did it all in the aim of trying to improve and trying to get better. And yeah, I guess just another point I've got around the Olympic Village, I touched upon the Olympians, but I had a really cool experience when I came back in 2012 because of the people that I met from the national team there. They kind of helped me get into the Olympic Village in London. So that was cool. I went around the Olympic Village. I saw kind of all the superstars that you see literally walking around as if it's like a town. I saw Usain Bolt. I saw Jessica Ennis, Tom Daley. I had lunch there and they're all sitting on the same table. And it's, oh my God, that's like, yeah, someone saying Ryan Giggs was there. And like, what's going on? Maybe I should have mentioned him now actually because he's in the news. But that was a really cool experience, and it was cool seeing how the all of the athletes, how the setup is for the Olympic Village, how they've got their own, the gyms, they've got essentially loads of sponsors that come in and set up their stalls to try and entice the athletes to do certain things and be part of their brand, etc. I went to the rooms, which obviously now they sold, I think in Stratford. Or East London, and that was really cool. It was a really cool experience, and I'm a bit gutted because my friend got a duvet cover with that they had for Olympics. They had a special duvet cover which they had all the different sports on it, and yeah, my friend might have taken one, but I was too die off to take one. So that was Olympic Village, and then I guess moving on to then after that. So then that was kind of when I started at Accenture. My professional life, and I won't, as I said, I won't go into details of actually the professional life itself, but I think when I started work, it was tough because I've gone from school where come back from school and playing full time to university where again it's kind of all on your own. I can play during the day and I can kind of manage my life myself, to playing full time in Hungary and Austria where I was basically playing all the time. Suddenly professional work where actually table tennis and sport is not the focus. The focus is work. That is what needs to get done. And table tennis is kind of seen as a side thing, which was tough at the start. And, managing playing after work was difficult. I guess the advice that I'd have, or the kind of learnings I've had, is to make sure you're just transparent, because I remember at the start, I was very nervous about telling people I'm leaving the office at 5:30 or 5:45 to go to play table tennis. I just wouldn't say that. I'd just try and sneak out, or I'd try and leave early and try not to tell anyone. Once I'd opened up a little bit more in terms of this is what I do, people at a higher level were more kind of encouraging of me to do that. So they would be happy for me to go as long as I got my stuff done. They were very happy for me to go and play, knowing that I'm doing that. I mean, it's not as black and white as that. I think there are certain people that see it as an extracurricular and not something that you need to do. It's something that you choose to do, and so there is still that difficulty and balance. I think one thing that I learned from that is you need to not care about what people think as well. If you want to do something, you're doing the right thing, and you're not sacrificing. So in this instance, I wasn't sacrificing work. I was making sure I was getting everything done. You should make sure you look after yourself and do what you need to. You do what you want to do. And I also think because I was playing much less, it showed the importance of how each session, and this applies to everything. So whatever you're doing, each session, whether it's a physical session, whether it's a sporting session, whether it's even anything, it's important to apply 100% to every single minute that you do of that. Because when you're a kid and when I was growing up, I definitely wasn't. There was a lot of messing around, which again is fine. I think it's fine and creative to do that kind of thing. But when you have limited time to do certain things, I think it did teach me to, and it's important to know that whatever you're doing, put your 100% in, because you'd have limited time to do that, and you regret it if you don't, and you won't improve as much as if you don't as well. So that's where I am kind of now. Now it's a little bit more flexible because I work with my family, and my dad lets me off the leash to play a little bit more. I guess COVID has changed things slightly. I hadn't played for the whole of 2021. I actually went to Sheffield on an elite exemption with they've got a Paralympic set up their training session there, Institute of Sport, and I was lucky enough they invited me to go there and play for a week there. So I went there a couple of weeks ago, which was quite cool. But other than that, I hadn't played for a long time, and lockdowns I hadn't played. So it is something that I miss, table tennis and sport generally. So I guess as things are opening up, it'll be quite cool to get back out there and start playing again. I guess just one thing I wanted to touch upon before I come to close was Jubilee Games, because I think obviously everyone here is Ismaili, and Jubilee Games is something that most of you guys have heard of, if not been to. I was lucky enough to go to Kenya in 2008 and experience the first Jubilee game, the Golden Jubilee Games there, and that was an amazing experience, especially for me. I remember actually over that week I'd been asked to play for England, and I'd rarely been asked to play for England. I was kind of just below that rung, so then they asked me. I was really happy, and it clashed with Kenya in the games. I remember I wanted to go to play for England, to be honest. My dad wouldn't say anything because I'm sure he wanted me to go to Kenya and do Jubilee Games, but it was actually my coach who said you should go to Kenya and play Jubilee Games, because and this was a non-Ismaili Hungarian guy, because he knew how much it meant to my dad and family to do that. So I did that, and luckily I won, and luckily it was great. It was a great experience meeting so many different people. I wasn't that I didn't know that many Ismaili people, and I didn't have that many Ismaili friends, and it was really nice to kind of be integrated with and see kind of it was the first time I remember anyway, seeing the global sporting community come together, and yeah, that was a really, really cool experience. And then Dubai in 2016, which is not that long ago. I guess to say it is long ago now, but didn't feel like that long ago. Was a totally different experience. There's a lot more thought and I guess money thrown at it to make it the biggest spectacle. Luckily, again, I managed to win that. I've actually got 2 medals here. I thought I'd show you as one prop that I have. So that's this one on the right is the one from Kenya. And as I said, I did mention the money thrown at this one. The bigger actual gold-plated one is the one from Dubai. And yeah, I think, again, it was really cool to have to meet people from a global level. I was actually involved. It was my first involvement with kind of volunteering in this way in the community, and I was the sports team manager there. So it was cool to have like a kind of management role with that in the lead up to the games, and then also being able to play and be part of the team. So that was pretty awesome. And yeah, I think that's it. I've got a couple of points just to remember. So I think from table tennis and from sport, I think don't underestimate the power of sport, what it can give you. I mean, other than the physical and technical elements of any sport that you play, I think it attributes to so much success in your life, whether it's discipline, determination, mental strength, hard work. There's so many things that sport can give you. I'm not suggesting that sport is the only thing that can give that to you, but it definitely enabled me to do, to have those skills, and in a way that I wasn't specifically aiming for those skills. I was there to play sport, but as a byproduct, it gave me those kind of things: teamwork, mental strength. As I mentioned the nerves, and I mentioned my hand doing this. There's very few occasions when you're growing up where you get into a situation, and I call it 9-9 in the fifth, because it's the final game, and it's 9-9, and 2 points decide which way the match goes. There's very rare occasions where, as a kid, you get put in those experiences, and it really is a test of character, and it really is you and them, and it's on a flip of a coin, which way is it going to go, and it's up to you in your head, and those experiences are definitely stuff that you can't learn and you can't replicate. The second point, I think sports give me the opportunity to open doors. It's given me chances to not only meet different people from across different ways of life. For me, growing up, school was a bubble, university was a bubble, but table tennis allowed me to meet people from all over the UK, from all different demographics, and I'm still in contact with many of them today. And it's a really nice, not only network to have, but just different experiences and different people to meet, as well as the fact that enabled me to travel to different places. It enabled me to to university. I could talk to different people. I went back to Nottingham University as an alumni and did a talk to different people, and I wouldn't have done those kind of things without sport. And I guess the last point is that, and this applies to everyone, sport is such a lifestyle. It's not just something that you do. It's something that's within you. I think if I now stop playing sport, stop playing table tennis, I would definitely go and play some other sport, because it's just ingrained in you, that lifestyle, that competitive nature, that that desire to keep physically fit, mentally fit, actively fit. Again, I look at my dad, and he's take up running last year, and he never really did much sport, and now he's hooked on it, and he does running every single day. And I think it's something that is you can start from a kid, you can start from however old you want to be. I definitely recommend it, and I'm more than happy to kind of share and speak personally if people want to get involved, whether it's running, whether it's sport. There's nothing like it, and it's nothing like it to help you as a person in everything you do. And yeah, I think that's it for me, Elisa. I don't know if there's any questions, but thank you very much for the opportunity to talk as well.
Thank you so much, Alim, and thank you for lifting the lid on some of the less glamorous aspects of sport. So we do have a couple of questions in the chat, so if that's okay, we can get straight to those. So one question is it hard to compete with the Chinese players, since they have big training camps and training centers, and they're very focused on it from a young age? How did you come across any of the Chinese players?
Yeah, so I think the Chinese are the best in the world, and you're right. They have the setup. They have the numbers that they play. There's a huge number of players, and it's also a national sport for them. So table tennis to them is our football. You go to China, and there's billboards in the streets of table tennis players. It really is that big, and from a global perspective. They start very young. The discipline that they're under is immense, and it's different to what we have in Europe. And yeah, it's very difficult to compete, I'd say, with on a global level, and internationally. Yeah, I have played a couple of Chinese players, not even the top ones, and it's just very difficult because of the amount that they're playing, and they normally start when they're very, very young. Some as young as 3 and 4. If not younger, actually.
Wow, yeah, that's intense. So the next question is about pay in the sport. So, as a professional table tennis player, is that something that one could kind of sustain a living on, or is it something that you have to do combined with another job or profession?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think at the top level, you definitely can get money. And when I say top level, I mean, well, I'll give an example. So my friend, he's hovered around the top 100 in the world for the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And he's probably making close to £100,000. So, and that's across the sponsors and across the club that he plays for, etc. So you can get that much money. I think it's you have to be at a very high level. So, for example, if I wanted to play now, I could make a little bit of money, but I could not make enough money to live here. In Hungary, I kind of just got by, and I probably even then was in negative, and that was me, as I said, paying £100 a month for a flat and living not very glamorously, as I mentioned, but you have to be, I think, to make something reasonably, if you're in the top 200 in the world, you can, but other than that, it's very, very difficult. And I think, especially when you live in a country like this, I think that if you go to some of the, I'd say, poor countries, but even let's say Hungary, for example, there's many more people living there because you can get by, but you can get by with £10,000 to £15,000. It's the same wage as if you were to work a normal job somewhere else at the time, right? So that's why you had many more people playing table tennis and as a living. But here, yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, thanks. So how do you think COVID has sort of impacted the sport, and given that it's so international and that tournaments are played abroad, and how do you think that that's going to play out, if you can have a crystal ball over the next few months or year?
Yeah, so I think so. So obviously, table tennis is an indoor sport compared to some of the outdoor sports. So it did stop for a while. I know some of the elite players in UK and then also abroad, they had stopped, even they stopped their training, and then only kind of, I say recently, in the last few months, there was this elite exemption that they got, and they were allowed to continue to practice. In terms of tournaments, I think they had the first international tournaments a few months ago. So they obviously had a big gap, big stop when COVID was happening, and they had that tournament. There was no fans and no nothing. It was kind of, people had to go, they had to quarantine for a couple of weeks before they played. So it was a bit of a logistical effort to get people to play, but they have started again. I think the UK is probably one of the slower countries to start with. And I'm not saying slow in a negative way. I'm just saying that, they're kind of putting a hold on many things, but even they've got plans to open up to start tournaments. Once June happens, there are national tournaments that are in the works to get to play as well.
Good to hear. So if there were 3 sports people, current or past, that you could choose to invite to a dinner party, who would they be?
3 sports people. Okay, so Rafa Nadal, because he's just been my idol since I was young. His passion and his determination, and he's also very humble as well when you speak to him in interviews as well. I think I had a poster of him on my wall at some point when I was young, but don't know where that's gone. I'm an Arsenal fan, so I'll probably say Thierry Henry. Also, he was an amazing player and very talented. And then I guess, it's not very fun for you guys, but a guy called Ma Lin, a Chinese table tennis player who again was he was Olympic champion. He was very, 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 very fast. He had legs the size of tree trunks, and he would literally just jump from one corner to the other corner and play forehands from everywhere. So I'd like to pick his, but I actually met him once and I was very, very happy to meet him, but he didn't speak any English. So
Great choices. So how does the game differ from the club level to the elite level in terms of technique, or kind of how does it change when you go from club to elite?
So I mentioned the physical element of it. That's a big difference, because I think, again, at club level, most people are standing in one spot and just hitting the ball back in a forehand. But at an elite level, the ball's coming so much faster to you. You need to be in the perfect position to be able to hit the ball. And in order to be in the perfect position, you have to be able to move to be in the perfect position. Whereas, at slow pace, you can kind of adjust your body and play. So that's the one thing. I think the other thing is also the spin. The spin on the ball. I can't remember the numbers, but I think, at certain shots, the ball is spinning about 100 times a second. It's very, very spin orientated game, which is partly why this is my opinion, I think isn't that spectator friendly, because many spectators aren't able to understand is one thing, but also see the spin on the ball. So and a lot of points are won based on the spin. So a lot of the skill is around the spin, and I think at a club level that's not really there. The equipment is very important to have the right equipment to be able to produce a spin, but at more of an elite level, having the right equipment and being able to understand the spin in the split second, the ball coming at you in a real split second, you've got to be able to move, adjust, read the spin, and then also hit the ball in the right place. So it's a very, very quick sport. The reaction times and the time you have to move, hit, and do everything are so short compared to any sport that I've ever played. And I think that's probably the main difference between the local level and kind of national level.
Thanks. So you mentioned how tough the training was when you were younger as a child. How did you kind of mentally cope with that when you were so young, and how did you keep very easy? I don't know. When I was a child, like if something was difficult, the instinct is to give up. So how did you kind of keep yourself motivated to do that?
I think results is one thing. So when you obviously see results and you see yourself improving, getting stronger and getting faster, desire to, you have to love what you're doing. I absolutely love table tennis. I love sport generally, and I still love sport. And doing something that you love is motivation enough for me to say, right, I'm doing this because I want to get better, I want to improve. Don't get me wrong, there were times I wanted to stop. There were definitely times I wanted to stop. There's been a few times where I've pushed myself and I've thrown up because, as a kid, because I've been pushing myself too hard, and those kind of times I do want to stop. But ultimately, you look at the bigger picture and your aim and what your aims are. And your aim is to try and be as good as you can be, and you understand the process that you're going on. Even at that age, I did understand the process that I was going on to try and be the best. So and I guess competition as well. I mean, you see other people next to you and they're doing it, and if you're not doing it, then you're falling back and you're not going to be as good as them. So that's also one thing that does motivate you as well.
Thanks. Do you see yourself going into coaching?
Possibly. I'm not sure I have the patience for it. I have tried a little bit. I've done a few sessions where I've been where kind of I've been asked to just help out and things like that, and you need to be very patient, especially with kids. There'll be some kids that will listen to you, and I remember that I have coached a little bit, and there's some kids that listen to you, and they're brilliant because you can feel that you're passing on knowledge and you're passing information. And there's some kids that you'll say the same thing again, and they'll just don't care what you're saying. And my patience maybe not, it needs to improve from that perspective. I would think about helping, especially kids that as I said, are responsive. There is a good feeling when you're helping someone and you can see that they're improving, or they're at least taking stuff in and listening.
Great. So on that note, I mean, if you were to give advice to a child who was thinking about, taking up table tennis or wanted to take it, to the next level, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them based on your experience?
That's a tricky one. I'd say listen. Just always listen to what people have to say. I think people, especially older and more, and have had more experience, have I'll be able to share, they can share stuff with you that you won't be able to know, that you ultimately won't be able to know. So just listen and take everything in, and ultimately you yourself will decipher which stuff you want to take in and what you won't want to take in. But it's important to always listen. I guess that applies to everyone now as well. It's not necessarily as a kid. But it's important to always listen to people who have done stuff before you or done stuff to a high level. And then at that point, if you want to take that advice on board, that's up to you. But at least gather the information that you can.
Well, great. Thank you so much for taking those questions and for being so open and honest about your experience. I think it's been a really interesting session. So thank you so much, Alim, for your time, and thank you to everyone for your questions and for joining us today. Alim, is there any final words that you wanted to say before we close?
Not really. I mean, just thank you everyone for joining. And I'd say from a sports perspective, if anyone wants to get involved and do something in sport, I'd definitely recommend it. If you're 6 years old or 60 years old, just get involved. And it's never too late to start to do, playing any sport, not necessarily table tennis, but any sport. And it really, really can change your life and change your lifestyle as well.
Great words to close on. Thank you so much.